Okay, we will call the meeting back to order at 6:39 p.m. Council, is there anything else, or administration, is there anything else on level of service policy CS 7204? Okay, seeing none, then we are moving on to item 5.2, the council procedural bylaw number 2003, and I will start with the mayor, please.
Thank you. And through the chair to committee, the procedure review committee has brought this back to a committee of the whole. What we're looking for today is exactly on the front page of the request for decision. We're looking to find out what committee is looking for in terms of the minute with council replacement. And there's the three suggestions that we've provided for council to choose from, unless there's anything else that a councillor can suggest. In terms of the movement of this bylaw, we did get a large report from our parliamentarian, and we've been working through that. We brought this to committee for some feedback in the past. This is the last piece of feedback that the committee feels like we need to get from the remainder of council before we can bring this to a meeting of council. It is the intent to have the parliamentarian come and give the full report at the council meeting when this comes forward in its final-ish draft, final being from the procedure review committee. Now, in terms of the draft bylaw that's in front of you today, I do want to bring your attention to one other matter. And if we flip through section 9 of the draft bylaw references presentations, and section 9.2 in this draft bylaw is actually incorrect. It reads that the presentation time will be no longer than 10 minutes. The intent of the procedure review committee is for that presentation timeline to be set by the agenda review committee, because those presentations are the auditor's presentations. Those things administrative led that have variable timelines and won't meet that 10-minute mark. So it's just to give some stability to those agendas. And I think there were a lot of edits in this one, and that one kind of came out as a typo. So unless there's any opposition from council when this does come back, section 9.2 will be changed in that regard. And other than that, we are looking for council's thoughts and opinions and feedback on the copy with council connect or community announcements as a replacement for minute with council. And it doesn't need to be any one, it could be a combination. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have Councillor Hawes. Actually, sorry, before I go to questions, council, just want to give the courtesy to administration to make sure that there's no addition to that report. Admin, anything before I go to council on this? CAO?
Through the chair, if I could, and this is a smaller item, but section 19, I just asked for a small language change. That's renewal motions. Renewal and reconsiderations are two different things procedurally. Reconsideration is in the same meeting in which it was discussed. Renewal is in subsequent meetings. So we don't actually have a process through our procedural by for renewal motions. It simply follows Robert's rule. We have the ability to renew a motion at any point in time. So that's just a minor language thing. It's actually should read reconsideration, but that was my only point. I flagged that for my team and Charlene, and she'll be making those changes.
Great. Thank you, CAO. I have Councillor Hawes, Taylor, then Ostashik. Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a quick question about the Council Connect and just a clarifying question, because currently right now, you know, as it is, we have minute with council, but there's no back and forth. Is the intent of Council Connect that it continues that way, that there's no back and forth? It's just the citizens sharing, having 2 minutes to share on specific topics in that particular agenda. But is that the intent, that there's no back and forth with council with that option?
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And if I may, through the chair to Councillor Hawes, the conversations around the procedure review committee specifically with Council Connect effectively looks very similar to our existing minute with the mayor, or sorry, minute with council. It changes language because we're going to a 2-minute time limit. As you'll notice, everything references the timers. I think we saw that timers work well tonight.
Yes.
But no, the intent was for Council Connect to effectively be very similar to our existing minute with council, but specific to items listed on the agenda rather than being an open free-for-all. And all of these come with pre-registration requirements.
If I may then.
Please.
So I guess I like the fact that it's pre-registration. I'm assuming pre-registration is just saying I want to, there's no documentation, there's nothing like that. My only concern with Council Connect is it does not the difficulty with council right now is the weaponizing of it. And I feel unfortunately with Council Connect, it doesn't address that. I think that there still is my concern over that. We're not able to, speak to the individual, especially if there's any mistruths or anything like that, and it can create some conflict. So in my opinion, Council Connect, I think, doesn't achieve what we were hoping to achieve with this. And I'll leave it at that. I do have some comments on some of the other ones too, but I'll leave it at that for now. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor O'Stasher.
I had a question that's not related to the the options for replacing the council. Is that okay?
Please.
Okay. Sorry. So it's part of the draft bylaw page. I think it's page 150 of the agenda package.
It's in the draft.
We're 149 for the 149 of the package, which is page 20 of 24 of the draft bylaw. It starts there, and then there's several pages of it. It looks like those are all things that were pulled out of Robert's rules and aren't necessarily applicable to council procedure. Now, specifically, one of the things I'm asking about, we don't currently require seconds for anything. And this speaks quite often about seconds to motions, and then there's a fairly complicated table about when seconds are needed and when they're not needed. So with the new procedure bylaws, the expectation that we're going to move to movers and seconders.
Thank you, and Councillor Stashik, thank you for the question. No, the expectation is not that we're going to be moving to movers and seconders. And this is actually a great example. In the recommendations from our parliamentarian, we pulled out a lot of redundant language in the bylaw. And with that, one of the suggestions that came forward was potentially adding an annex or a cheat sheet that is posted that councillors or new councillors especially can reference for procedures that are in Robert's rules and not necessarily referenced within our bylaw. So these sections from page 149 on are examples of some of the cheat sheet options that we have. And I believe that these are taken from what is given to our youth council. But that is another point of discussion that we can have here, as we did remove a lot of the boilerplate and repetition from Robert's rule. It was felt that some of those things were referenced by councillors who don't want to open up the Robert's Rules book. And so any feedback on what cheat sheet items could be included in an easy place to access for council at this time would be appreciated. But anything that doesn't apply will be absolutely removed, and none of that will be contained in the bylaw. That would be the appropriate thing.
So to follow up, then yeah, okay. So to clarify, that's not actually part of the procedure bylaw then. So that's fine. That's great. I'm in favor of having cheat sheets and additional information available so people understand general meeting process, Robert's rules, etc. As long as it's not confusing that the information that's being given isn't contradictory to the procedure bylaw and how council does things. For example, like the thing about the seconds, I wouldn't want a new councillor being under the impression that they require seconding for motions at a council meeting. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So going back to the minute with council, My other, I guess, concern about coffee with council is the availability, I think, of councilors being able to attend that necessarily before council. I realize, that sometimes it's not easy for some councilors to get here at that time. So personally, I really like the community announcements. To me, that's the best option. As for, sharing concerns or anything, our citizens have shown a great deal of effort in sending council emails. They're to reach out to councilors, speak to any concerns. To me, the community announcement option is an opportunity for organizations to come to council, get promotion of different things that are happening, and I don't think we get enough of that. And I think we need to emphasize that. We get talked a lot sometimes about how not everybody's on social media and Facebook and things like this. This gives a great opportunity. I think one, for example, I can think of is I don't know how many people have talked to about Coach for Kids, and they didn't see it. And when does it end? And it's on Facebook. And this is an opportunity to announce those things on council meetings. So I personally like the move that it's the community announcements, the committee replacement and council with community announcements in the draft council procedure bylaw number 2003. And I'm going to leave it at that and see what the rest of council feels about it. So
I have Councillor Race and myself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where here is the ability for someone to come before council and say, good job, you guys, good job, or I think you're doing a terrible job. I'm not seeing that in any one of these. And I don't want to take that away from the people who've done it for you. So. Is it there anywhere?
number 2.
Through the chair, please, if we
Yeah,
could.
sorry.
Yeah,
Can I just
please.
number 2 is the option would allow citizens to address specific items listed on the meeting agenda. I would love to come to council and I'm not a councilor and applaud council. Say it aloud. With my 1 minute with council, this takes that away from our citizens and I don't want to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. I have myself up next. I'm after a lot of consideration on this. I hear Councillor Race's concern, and I certainly agree. But I've been thinking over the problem, the question, some of the issues that fellow councillors have brought up. Some folks will come to council and they'll be less than respectful. That's a reality that we've seen, and it's not okay for a lot of different reasons. A safety issue is one thing, and that's aside, that's something else. But when it comes to somebody taking a disrespectful tone, and this is my larger concern, I think Councillor Ostashik has emphasized this a number of times, feeding misinformation into the public without council having that avenue to say, no, that's not true, actually. I actually think the response isn't necessarily to get rid of the minute with council. I think it's to give council a chance to respond prior to conducting the rest of the meeting's business. Following that, for myself, that would be it. Because whether or not we choose to address it at that moment, that information's out in the public anyway. We've seen how people react on Facebook and some of the really just the false information they'll put out there to further their own agendas. Unless you go to where that information is, you don't have a chance to combat it. Is it uncomfortable sometimes? Yep, it is. But this is an uncomfortable business at times. So for myself, I think giving council a chance to address some of those things when they come before council, when somebody says something untrue about what council's done or what administration has done. I think that's the way to combat it, is with truth. And again, is it uncomfortable? Yep, it is. But that's part of what I signed up for. So for myself, I'd actually like to see us maintain some sort of format where the public can still come before council, say their piece, but then if council or administration has a serious concern, it can be addressed. And we can fight mistruth with truth. So that would be my personal opinion. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of you. Tonight's a good example. People came and talked about something that wasn't on the agenda. And I think they feel the public wants to have that right. They're gonna, and I think that's an important right to have. A lot of what we're speaking of, if it's disrespect, is a chairman, a job. Like, that being said, I don't mind some of these changes. You know, pre-registering the day before, I like, you know, the timer idea, I like that idea. I don't like the idea of only being stuck to specific items in the council meeting. That's the one thing I object to the most. Being able to do announcements, yeah, 2, so I like 2 and 3. Just take away the business of you can only speak to a specific item. You know, this isn't really a problem that we see every day if we get to the. How long we had lots of people here, 2 or 3 times, not very often.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. And just through the charter committee, I did want to remind the committee that this actually, these changes don't take away the ability for groups in the community to put through delegations. So the situation we had this evening, for example, that was a community group concerned about a topic. They submitted to bring in a delegation. In my mind, the situation today, that was the delegation was on the agenda. If we were to go with number 2, for instance, in this issue, and the minute with councils, all today we're speaking to an agenda item. So that, in my mind, would be how that would work. We're not looking to preclude the opportunity for citizens to come in and speak to council. We're looking to create a more organized manner for that to happen, where our council meetings aren't hijacked for 30, 40 minutes at the beginning by something that was unplanned and unforecasted by ourselves and admin. On large agendas, this is a mechanism to, again, maintain the structure and timings of our meetings going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Ostashik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a suggestion that was brought forward earlier regarding when somebody comes for a minute with council connect, whatever it might be called, and that they are publicly dispersing misinformation that council is given an opportunity to rebut. I'm not sure about that. We have a lot of business that we need to attend to at council meetings. Council meetings are often long. I'd really hate to see for that portion of the meeting to turn into a back and forth debate between every single person on council wanting to speak to the comments that were made by somebody who's addressing council or committee, and have it just devolve into a free-for-all back and forth argument, for lack of a better word, when the time that everyone is spending at these meetings could probably be much more productively spent. I really don't see the issue with citizens being able to reach out through more conventional means to express their concerns, their appreciation, their complaints, whatever it is, through all of our phones are listed on the website. They can phone, email addresses, they can all email. There's many ways that citizens can reach out to the council to be able to express whatever it is that they want to express without it having to be at the formal council meeting. There's just been too many times where I've seen people intentionally bend or break the rules, knowing that the response from council isn't going to be coming, so they can dispense the misinformation, they can ask pointed questions that they know they're not going to get an answer to. In short, I've just seen too many instances where minute with council has been weaponized to try and drive an individual's agenda. And I don't think it's appropriate, and I think there's other avenues that those people can express those concerns without it being in front of the public meeting of council. Thanks.
Councilor Haas?
Yeah, and I like, as Mayor Easton mentioned, I mean, everyone has the right to request a delegation. Sure, there is some requirements necessary to come to council with a delegation, but honestly, if there's something like me that they can speak to, because then there can be a back and forth and an understanding, that happens. But, excuse me, but I just don't see. I don't see the necessity of a minute with council when it does, because I agree with Councillor Stashik. If we start that going back and forth, then yeah, where does it stop? Makes it very difficult for the chair then, who's in that position to then, minimize what is kind of like, I want to say something because of it, but it just creates another layer of conflict, difficulty between council and the citizens. So I agree. I think our citizens have demonstrated, again, they are not reluctant to reach out to councilors, send emails, and if they want a delegation, they're welcome to then come and do that delegation. To me, I want to make that part, a positive interaction between Hinton's the town of council administration and the citizens of our community and promote the things that are happening in our community. So to me, that's what I'd like to see. Now, I'm okay with a few, if it's a combination of the two, like Councillor Taylor said. I mean, I'm just putting out there the community announcements, be part of that. But I just don't see the necessity of it for the Council Connect. Thank you.
Councillor Race.
Thank you, sir. I won't support anything that does not allow our citizens to come in and give us their time. They got in the car, they drove here. And I know you guys, you're not agreeing, some of you, with what I'm saying right now. But I think it's so important that our people know they can come to our committee meeting, our regular meeting, and we will allow them that minute to speak. And I like what Councillor McGowan is saying. If someone's sitting there telling a lie, saying, I heard all of council was in the city, spending our tax money, getting drunk, we will take the opportunity to correct that. I like what you're saying. And it doesn't have to be a back and forth, everybody getting involved. One person is gonna give them the truth. Whether they accept it or not. Thank you, sir.
I have Councillor Chambers, myself, then Councillor Haas.
Thank you through the chair. So I agree with everybody in a different way. So, not a fan of coffee with council, love the concept, but I just don't know that, trying to get here in time for the meeting is hard enough. Sometimes I think if someone was coming and anticipating that all of council is going to be there to meet with them, I think it could be a hard expectation to manage. I love Council Connect. Because I think it's important. I like the pre-registration, the Mondays, all that sort of stuff. I really like community announcements. I kind of like a blend of those things. But my question is, so we've had some mistruths kind of splattered at us in Minute with Council before. And from what I recall, there was just a point of order called and a clarification presented. Is that inappropriate or is that something that can continue? Because I do think that at some point, some of the conversations have to be stopped. Or like, is that at the chair's discretion and we just haven't been choosing to use that mechanism? I don't know the answer to that, obviously, but I do think some of the things should be responded to, but I wouldn't be in favor of I speak and then you speak and then you speak and you speak and then we end up bantering with somebody. It's not an appropriate mechanism in that way, but can you call a point of order for something like that?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and through the chair to respond to Councillor Chambers. So the point of orders that we've done in the past, that seems to be a reasonable procedure. The reason this is ultimately before us is because when we spoke to the parliamentarian told us to get rid of it. In no uncertain terms. He said it's causing problems in other communities are moving away from it and try to find it in a different way. In terms of the chair's discretion, that's the other thing the parliamentarian brought about in council such as ours. The chair really doesn't have discretion, it's council's discretion. And so anything that we've removed a lot of the chair's discretion from the procedure bylaw as a result, and this is again taking it away from discretion and giving a hard timing. So it's a hard timing of 2 minutes with a timer. We're taking away that discretion so it doesn't have to go to a vote of council, which is the appropriate thing to do for a body of our size and type.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have myself in next, and I'm gonna address some of the concerns that councilors have identified about it back and forth with, one of the options I had suggested. That just came from me, is that I'm not envisioning a back and forth. I think that's messy at best. I'm talking about after all of the minute with councils have had a chance to say their piece and they're done. If there's anything that's glaringly, has been a personal affront to council, or is something that really should have been in retrospect a point of order that, it's the privilege of a sitting councilor to say, no, I have a problem with that and here's why, and we're not going to debate that. Because as a councilor, here's where I'm sitting and here's what I think should be end, let's move on. But for myself, one of the concerning things here, and it's ironic, a big part of this, and the mayor's right, the recommendation is that you get rid of this. The exact people who will be the most upset that this potentially is gone are the people who abuse it the worst. And that is a huge irony, because people are unable to just be respectful and say, here's what I think and this is why. It's, here's what I think and you are a terrible person for not agreeing with me, and let me tell you, council, why. So that's the problem, is that people can't just say, here's what I think. And I don't want everybody else to suffer that loss of democracy, of being able to go in front of your elected officials and say, hey, here's what I think. I think I don't agree with all of you. This is what I think is important, but here's why. And I think for the rest of the community to lose out on an essential function of democracy because we are seeing polarization, I don't know, maybe the problem is I think that's a loss and there's ways around that. Before giving that up, I'd like to try a few other solutions. That's just myself. Councillor Hawes and Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, and thank you, Councillor Magoon. I guess where I'm coming from is a couple of things. One, we've paid a contractor good money to bring us recommendations, and those recommendations from that parliamentarian, I think, are based on a lot of what we also heard at our recent Alberta Munis conference as well, of the abuse that unfortunately has been demonstrated towards municipal councillors in whether it's our community and others, because of that lack of respect that Councillor Magoon is talking about, to the point where we heard at Alberta Munis that people are threatened physically, they're threatened in lots of different ways and things like that, that are having an impact in the municipal world. And I believe that probably that's a big reason why the parliamentarian made those recommendations. It's absolutely too bad that has happened, but I think we also have a duty of protecting ourselves as well. We take a position, and I agree that we take ownership and accountability that we expect people to not agree with us. But we shouldn't also be able to be abused, out in an open forum without any ability to respond. I know we've point of ordered it before, but I honestly felt that more confrontational. I can point of order a council member because it's in our procedure bylaw, I don't agree. To do that to a community member, I don't like doing that. I didn't want to do it, but it was the only mechanism I had at the time to try to get that truth out of them. So I just think there's so many other options that people have to come to us. And I think that, unfortunately, our society has created the opportunity to abuse that or take that opportunity to be inappropriate towards people. And I think, unfortunately, that's what we're seeing happen in a lot of places, and a lot worse in a lot of places than just, what we've experienced already. So, thank you.
Councillor Taylor and myself. Councillor Taylor?
I feel like we've talked about this enough, so I'm almost ready to put some sort of direction. You can vote yes or no.
Perfect, and that's what I was gonna ask.
Sorry, I have, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I put forward the direction for community announcements.
Oh, I apologize. I did not hear that as a consent.
Sorry, yeah, I guess I wanted to go with community. Sorry, my apologies.
No,
I did.
if I missed
wanted-
it, that's me.
Yeah, I wanted to have the community announcements in there.
Okay, so if you wouldn't mind, Councillor Hawes, if you can reread that.
Yeah, the committee replaced minute with council with community announcements in the draft council procedure bylaw number 2003. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. We'll do the other one separately.
Councillor Taylor, I apologize to you if there was any misunderstanding there. Would you like to speak to that?
Just have a question. I'm in favor of that as one of the options, but I'd like another option to be a version of the Council Connect. So if I vote in favor of this, can I also vote in favor of another option? There's nothing there that restricts me?
Let's just, that's the way I would understand it, but the chair is gonna seek admin's clarification. Admin, would that be your understanding as well?
Through the chair, yes, so we can certainly vote to amend it to include council connect as well. I see them as totally different processes.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, does that address your?
Yeah, that's perfect, thanks.
Councillor Race?
Sorry, what did Jordan say?
Yes, they could be included separately, so you could have more than one item.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Council, any further discussion on, sorry, we're just gonna make sure of the wording, Councillor Hawes first, that it reflects your consensus. The committee replacement it with council with community announcements in the draft council procedural bylaw. Would we be looking to replace it in full? Because if we replace it, then that actually does replace it as the only, or are we looking for to include CAF?
Sorry, Chair, can you?
Currently, the wording that I see on the screen is that committee replacement it with council with community announcements in the draft council procedure bylaw. Councillor Taylor had asked if he supports this, or sorry, maybe it was Councillor Race. If this is supported, will this be the only option? If we use the word replace, isn't that? Or does it not preclude anything else if we use the word replace?
Through the chair, members of council, no, I think the motion on the floor is that this says that we're getting rid of minute with council as it currently stands in our procedural bylaw. We are adding this one. If we wanted to add in new processes like council connect or popular council, we can just make a motion to amend this bylaw to include those items.
Councillors, any questions or discussion on that item? Councillor Taylor?
Does this allow somebody to come to a council meeting and with their community announcements? Okay.
If I may.
Please.
It's my understanding, if I may, because they have to pre-register Monday before, they still have to pre-register. And it's to a platform for individuals and community organizations to announce events. So that's my understanding, but they still have to pre-register.
Putting myself in queue briefly, unfortunately with the wording, I can't support it. Because we're not replacing like for like. In this case, it says replace minute with council with community announcements. I think community announcements is important. And if it simply said include community announcements in the draft bylaw, I'd be supportive of it. But in this case, because it's replacing it, and I don't know what other form it'll take, I can't support it. Thank you. Councillor House?
So, and I hear that, and I don't disagree with that, because my understanding is we can have combinations of them. I'm not comfortable with what is there. I'm comfortable with this one, but if I can look to administration, what would you recommend as a change in wording that would enter into the draft procedure bylaw that this is one of the elements to the, what you can bring to council, but then leaves it open for another option as well. What can I do to change that wording? Because I'm willing to change the wording.
Through the chair, to Councillor Hawes, sir. Is it your interest to really combine two of these options? Or to include both, or, because we can add them one at a time, we can make this motion, we can add another one. Or, the committee could simply direct administration to bring back some wording that combines two options.
Yeah,
either one works, or through an amendment with council's blessing, you could add another option.
so my worry about, and if I may, Mr. Chair,
Please.
if we amend it and add another option, I'm probably gonna say to split. Because I might be in favor of one and I'm not in favor of the other one, so if we don't split it, then I'm in a position where I'd have to, so if there was two things on here, so what I wanna do is accommodate. I'd like to see that that community announcements is part of our procedure bylaw. And then that doesn't preclude that there could be another option into our procedure bylaw that may include interaction with. Now, whether I vote for it or not, that's another story, but that's what I'm trying to accomplish if there's an interest.
Yeah, CAO?
And through the chair, this motion accomplishes two things. It takes many of the council off the board. Okay. And it adds in community announcements. If council is to pass that, that's what would happen. If we want to add, any other option or any other process or any other procedures, we would just need another motion to do those things in the consent order.
Okay, if that's possible, then I'll leave it the way it is then, if that's, yeah. Thank you, Administration.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Mr. Mayor?
I actually think we resolved that, so you can take me off.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much. Council, any further discussion on the consensus request on the floor? Councillor Reyes?
Yeah, I won't support this. I don't want it. And I don't know if you guys remember back in 2013, 2014, in regular council, there was somebody who came to speak. And they got quite emotional. And a councillor actually got up from her chair and went to console them. And I go, that is what this is all about, okay? They showed empathy to that speaker. I don't want to take that away. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor. Council, any further discussion on the consensus request on the floor? Councillor Taylor?
I don't think this does, because we just adding, this is just a subset of what member council is gonna be, and then we're gonna add, somebody's gonna come up with a motion, I know they are for sure, that adds something else to it that allows the thing that you are talking about. So this, we're gonna have a couple of things, whether they vote for it, I don't know. I don't think this is not gonna prevent if you say, provided the next motion after this passes.
Councillor Reyes?
I hear what you're saying, but I didn't hear what he said. So I'll wait for that next motion.
Okay. Thank you, Council. Council, any further discussion before we call the question? Seeing none, Council will call the question that committee replace the minute with council with community announcements in the draft council procedural bylaw number 2003. Please vote electronically now. And that is carried 5-2 with Councillors Race and Magoon against. Councillor Taylor.
I'd like to make a consensus that council add council connect with as written in the agenda with one modification. That modification is that it's not that they can speak to any topic, I guess I'm not sure of any topics, but any topic on the council meeting, not just necessarily restricted to the items listed in the meeting agenda.
Councillor Taylor, well, Ms. Davy Campbell's capturing that. Do you care to speak to that?
No, I already said, I think that people will, I think it's one of those things that if you didn't have it, yeah, you could do what Todd said, and we could follow his recommendations since we've been doing this for so long. It changes, health manages, and we've got, it's not point of order, it's point of privilege, and then that allows you to address inaccurate comments towards reputation or council administration, that sort of stuff. We have that freedom already.
While that's being captured, I'll put myself in queue just for a question. So essentially, in principle, what you're saying is that there would be no limitations on the topic to be addressed, and that it would be 2 minutes long instead of a minute as it currently is, correct?
Yeah, and there would be a timer,
There'd be a time.
and that to me is kind of what we have now.
And then we'll just double check. Councillor Taylor, does that reflect your? Oh. That committee reached consensus to add Council Connect to the council procedure bylaw number 2003 and make the modification that citizens can speak to any topic at the meeting or any topic.
Any topic.
Does that reflect your?
Yeah, the intent is that we wouldn't restrict the topics like we currently don't. We can come and talk about Star Wars or something like that.
Councillor Chambers.
Thank you through the chair. So essentially though, what this motion does is our recommendation by the parliamentarian was to remove minute with council, and essentially we're keeping minute with council, calling it something different and giving them more time.
Mr. Mayor.
Just, that's what I see.
So through the chair to Councillor Chambers, what this does is give firm rules to what we're currently practicing. So right now, the minute is not a defined minute. It has no timer associated with it. Pre-registration's a practice that we're trying to introduce, but is not in our current bylaw. So the minute with council as it's written today needs to be adjusted, and these are reasonable adjustments to that, doing the things that we've been practicing for the last number of months. So hopefully that answers your question. I think it's followed.
I'll follow up then Councillor Ostashik.
So in theory, even though it's not taking away that minute with council, specifically adding in the parameters is still moving us ahead in the procedural bylaw from what we've been doing now. And as the parliamentarian and committee.
Absolutely. The procedure we have right now with minute with council, there's no real bounds to it whatsoever, and they've proven unenforceable. This provides the bounds, and Council Connect again, very similar to our existing minute with council, but with the rules formally written out. And with this amendment, it is very similar to our existing.
And I'll get explained.
Councillor Ostashik, then Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before I would be able to support this, it needs some information on how this manages the risk that's been open with minute with council to this point. I've spoken to it before. There's been other communities that have had some really unfortunate things happen at their public meetings when bad behaviors came in and took advantage of the opportunity to be able to speak in front of council and done some very reprehensible things. What is, if this is accepted, what's in place to help manage that risk? Because I'm along the lines of Councillor Chambers. I really don't see that this is anything different than current minute with council, except they get more time and they have to register a day ahead.
Councillor Taylor.
You have two tools, whether you choose to use them or not. Tool one is the point privilege. And tool two is because these are defined rules, the chair has the ability to ask all of council if he can modify the defined rules to rule. I don't know if the chair needs to do this, but if you could rule somebody out of order, and you could, I guess, get a vote. I don't know why a chair can't rule somebody out of order and say, yeah, I don't allow you to speak anymore.
Councillor Ostashik, do you want to respond?
Yeah, sure. I don't see that the chair has that power to do that with these rules. These rules predicate pre-registration and a time limit. That's it. That's all the chair can speak to. It doesn't speak to respectful tone. It doesn't speak to factual information. It doesn't speak to anything like that have been any of the things that council's brought forward as concerns that people that the bad behaviors have done to try and defeat the purpose of publicly speaking to council.
I have, if I may right now, as a member of the committee, the mayor would like to address Councillor Ostashek's question. So I'm gonna allow that. Councillor Haas, I understand you've been patient. I apologize.
No,
And then Councillor Taylor, I'll put you after Councillor Haas. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and specifically to Councillor Stashik's question, with this option, the bound that would the hope to prevent those sorts of issues was confining it to items on the agenda for that meeting. That was one of those mechanisms for moving that forward, but again, this is not a recommended option by the parliamentarian for all of the reasons that you've mentioned. And I have nothing to say that this meets those requirements for reducing that risk over time. Having specific items on the agenda does reduce the risk of that to some extent. Pre-registration reduces the risk to some extent, and then the digital timer in the 2 minutes. I do feel that to Councillor Taylor's point, by the time we do a point of privilege and a point of order, the 2-minute timer will beep anyways, and we're going to be sending them off with this procedure. And that would be the goal: is we have a hard time, we have a timer, we have a procedure, you're not talking on that 2 minutes, no matter what you're saying, would be the goal of this. Thank you.
Councillor Haas, Taylor, and myself.
so. We have two things. One, as I'm reading the cheat sheet, which I like, it's not a point, if we are to disagree with it, it's not a point of privilege. It has to be a point of order. Point of privilege is noises, room, temperature, go to the bathroom. Point of order is a procedure or personal affront, which refers to an action or statement that insults or offends, personal offensive act or word, a deliberate act or display of disrespect, and so forth. So to be clear, yeah, point of privilege would not be the go-to, but I'm of the same mind. I think honestly, if I would personally like to consider tabling this particular one till we have an opportunity to discuss it with our parliamentarian. I agree that, you know, the committee has talked to the parliamentarian, worked with them, but I think this is enough to, when that person comes to council, to have a conversation with the expert in this field and get their input on this and hear from all of council on this. Because I think this is, to me, this is a big decision personally. Because right now I can't support it. I mean, only way that I would support it if it was back to a minute, to be honest with you, because I don't see the benefit of having more than a minute. And then having the timer, that's fine. But personally, I'd like to wait to have that conversation with the parliamentarian, is my thought. So is that the correct, on the cheat sheet, is that the correct tabling it till that meeting, or is that a different, one at this point?
Councillor Taylor, myself, the mayor, then Councillor Reyes. Councillor Taylor.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel exactly the same, not just on this topic, but I have motions to change for the council procedure bylaw 2. And I feel much more comfortable bringing those forward if Todd was here so I could discuss them. And I think it would be better in a committee of the whole meeting, frankly. So, I mean, I can withdraw this, but I feel that way, not just about that topic, but about other topics that we're talking about. I would rather this be taking place with Todd here. We can delay it, don't rush to do this.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I have myself next. I think just to speak to some of the concerns of fellow councillors, I think it wouldn't surprise if it was the will of council, because one of the areas council had said they were concerned about was the minute with council and what that looked like. So again, for full transparency, as the mayor had mentioned, you know, the expert advice that we got from the best practices was not to have it in general. So I think to address your concerns, even though that's not what I personally am in favor of, you know, the advice was no, don't have it, causes too many problems in too many communities. You're absolutely right. So, you know, if it's the will of council to say, hey, we need some more time with this in committee of the whole with the parliamentarian, that's certainly an option. Just speaking for myself, I'm in favor of having an interface with the public. I have the mayor, Councillor Race, and Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, and to Councillor Stashik's point, and from the committee's perspective, to table this and bring the parliamentarian back to a meeting of the committee or to a committee meeting is not a problem. We have, as a municipality, paid for one visit from the parliamentarian, and we have been saving it for when council is ready with questions to move this bylaw forward before we actually pass anything. So if this is the time, then I think the next action on this file, regardless of what decision we make here, will be to bring this back to committee with the parliamentarian. And I would ask that if council has any other issues that they like to see changed in this bylaw prior to that meeting, to advise us so that the procedure review committee can discuss those things and be prepared for that meeting when the parliamentarian comes out with the things that council is interested in. This whole discussion is to get that feel for where council stands today on this issue. Thank you.
I have Councillor Race, then Councillor Hawes.
Thank you very much. I just want to bring up the announcement that the chair does just prior to a minute with council, eh? And you did it tonight. You said, address the chair, avoid asking questions, remain respectful. You said that. And I would say everybody did. They started clapping. You said to them, don't be clapping anymore, or you did put that out there, eh? And then they clapped several times more. That's on us to say. I told you once, applauding and yelling yay is not appropriate in this setting. I'm not gonna tell you a second time. So you laid the ground rules down. We've just got to enforce them.
Councillor Stashik, is that directly to that comment?
Yep.
Okay, please go ahead.
I disagree. There was at least one speaker who was quite disrespectful. I believe the chair spoke to him, but it was after he was finished speaking.
Yes.
He was quite disrespectful. And if we're going to talk about tonight, there was also misinformation that was presented. There was reference to Indigenous and First Nations Métis consultation, which isn't something that's required. It's not even something that's appropriate for what we're doing. There's no approvals that we need to give to that project that would require outside consultation. And that's a matter that didn't get spoke to because of the limitations in minute with council and the limitations with this. It doesn't even get addressed. So it can create the impression that there's a requirement for Indigenous consultation that the town of Hinton didn't follow through on, which isn't the case. And these are my concerns that I've brought forward multiple times about minute with council and how it's used and what the repercussions are from it sometimes.
Councillor Race, it's been answered and responded to. I'm gonna go to Councillor Hawes. He's been patient. And also, council, we do have a consensus request on the floor that we do need to ultimately deal with.
Right.
Councillor Hawes.
So what I'd like to do with that consensus, and I'm looking to administration, is it tabling or is it moving to postpone this until we talk to have the parliamentary? Because I don't want to lose this consensus, because that's part of the discussion. So is it postponed, or is that the appropriate?
Just as the chair though, Councillor Hawes, if I may, there might be an easier route. So I'm gonna look to Councillor Taylor to speak.
I'm happy to withdraw it. I certainly can remember what it is for the next meeting.
Council, is there any objection to Councillor Taylor withdrawing that from the table in hearing?
I'm happy to withdraw, providing that if we can rediscuss it when we've got the expert here, right? This thought is really.
Yes. Council, any objection if Councillor Taylor chooses to withdraw? Just want to check that first. Councillor Taylor, would you like to withdraw that?
Yes, please.
Council, any objections? Seeing none, that's withdrawn. Thank you very much. Council, anything else on this admin? If I may, just from a procedural perspective, do you require any official consensus from council coming out of this in order to set up a meeting with our parliamentarian at a committee of the whole, or would that just be next steps?
Through the chair to members of council, no, I think I think it's clear that we still have something to talk about, so we'll continue to have this discussion at the committee of the whole. And we will invite our parliamentarian, so we'll look at at a future meeting. It probably won't be in our next committee meeting. We have a lot of topics piling up, so we may be looking at the new year, but we can certainly look at that. We'll go through the committee and staff on this item to bring this.
Sounds good. Thanks, admin. Thanks, council. Council, anything else before we move on? Councilor Taylor,
Just a clarification on some information, if I could.
please.
The GUA, before they would issue a trail approval, would require consultation. So they've issued a trail approval, so they have done consultation according to the GUA standards. That wouldn't be probably maybe the standards that everybody would like. But if they've issued a trail approval, that's probably being done. They would issue one without.
Councilor Stashik,
I could respond.
please, yeah.
The specific implication that was made at the council was that the town needed to consult. That it was a direct question, which also isn't actually allowed within the council. It was a direct question, did the town engage in Indigenous consultation? And like I said, it's not even appropriate for what the town is doing, what they're considering, what was before council. It's not even an aspect of what the town was doing, so. Like I said, it creates the impression that the town, it could create the impression that the town was supposed to engage in Indigenous consultation and they didn't, which isn't the case.
Council, anything else? Seeing none, then we will carry on to reports from administration 5.3, the election bylaw number 2004. Admin.
Thank you, Chair. I will pass this along to Ms. Bordeaux.
Good evening, please, thank you. 2025, October 20th, it is an election. There's also another already legislative date, and that is the nomination period as well as the actual nomination day. With the general election and those items already being determined under legislation, administration is bringing this forward so that some of the other more administrative tasks to do with the election can be assigned to the returning officer rather than repeated reports to council for setting things like institutional voting, advanced poll location and dates, and those type of very administrative items. I do want to point out as well, if the bylaw that is before you this evening does go forward to a future meeting of council, which is our recommended action, that the bylaw does include the requirement for a criminal record check for anyone running for council. And with that, I will take any questions.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Please, CAO.
Just a little bit of additional information, because I think as for the course of the criminal record checks was a big topic of conversation, but as of right now, the legislation is drafted very broadly. So I've been doing a little bit of looking into this as how we actually manage this internally. So when you get a criminal record check back, and what this would require is that to actually file your nomination, you have to provide us a criminal record check. But what a criminal record check looks like is nothing showed up, or there's a possible match. So that could mean some other person within the same name as you in some other part of the country. But as looking at the legislation, they don't actually allow us to go any further to require the individual to confirm they have a criminal record or they don't, or what the charges are. As an employer, and I don't want to confuse it with what an employer typically has is a satisfactory criminal record check, because we have the authority to actually say, we need to know what those charges were, we'll confirm however those look, and if it's satisfactory to us, this is really, I think that our ability would be limited to that first step of saying, I could possibly have a criminal record. And I don't think they'll have a requirement to go any further, and I don't think we as a town can force those individuals to do that. But with that item, I think that it'll be on the candidate if they want to say clear their name, like, you know, there are people who know that they have to go through at least 2 steps to get a clean criminal record check, because every time they do it, something pops up. So it'll be on them to actually provide the second step, which is in some cases is fingerprint identification or other steps. But I don't believe we'll be able to enforce that. That'll kind of be on the candidate. What we can require is that there is a possible match. And then the legislation and the other question would be, what do we do with that information? And really, it's part of the nomination papers, that's all public information. So the intent of the legislation is, this is to be, you know, the public has the right to know if the candidate has a criminal record. What they do with it is up to them. I don't think that a matter of practice, we're going to be posting these things. But if somebody is to come in and FOIP somebody's nomination form, the criminal record check is public record and is public. So just a few other considerations with this one.
Councillor Taylor and myself.
It's another Stuart Taylor. My question is, I read this, and I didn't have any concerns with what was done. It seemed kind of procedural, but since the election is 11 months away, maybe, we better off to delay this a few months until the province has regulations or more specific direction coming out, because won't they have that before the next election? Because that's the intent of having this, is to have this already. So if they don't have that degree of specificity out here, like you said, shouldn't we just wait until they do and then put this through?
Through the chair, on that particular clause, that's optional for all communities, so we could leave that clause out. The actual bylaw itself, we need it passed before the end of the year, because the nomination period starts February. So we could leave that specific clause out, but if we leave it out, you know, by the time we actually reintroduce it, the nomination period probably has started, and we won't be able to enforce that likely until the next election. So if we would like it, we probably would have to include it. I know Alberta municipalities has requested some more information on how that's managed. But, you know, so if more details come out on that, maybe we can manage it a little bit closer. But as of right now, the criminal record check, what we could require, it's that step one. The rest would be on the candidate to actually get us more information, which we would gladly include as part of the nomination package, or to just clear their own name. But the other consideration is if somebody does have a criminal record, they would submit it. It says they could possibly have a criminal record, but they have no obligation to disclose what that is or any other detail. But I would say that if we want to continue, knowing that there is a little bit of ambiguity around this, we do it now, or if we want it for this election.
I'm actually gonna draw my name, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and through the chair, just to administration, I guess I'm looking for a little bit of clarification. So as Councillor Taylor mentioned, this bylaw seems pretty standard. But from listening to your discussion, it sounds like you are looking for a decision from council today about whether to include item 4.3 specifically in the bylaw, the reference to the criminal record check. And if I'm understanding correctly, the way the provincial legislation set up is up to our council today to determine whether we want a criminal record check filed with nomination paperwork in the next election or not. Is that correct?
Yes, well, this bylaw will make up the bylaw in perpetuity, so, you know, so it is up to this council of, do we want criminal record checks to be a part of it? It's an optional piece of the legislation that's at the discretion of every community.
And if I may,
Mr. Mayor.
and just so I'm absolutely dead clear, what this portion of this bylaw relates to, you're specifically talking about 4.3 and 4.3 only. Is that correct? So if we were to make a motion to move this forward, say without criminal record checks, we would remove item 4.3 and that would answer that question? Or if we were to want criminal record checks, we just move it along as is? Just want to make sure I fully.
That's correct. If council doesn't want to require them, just require a motion to remove 4.3.
Okay.
Councillor Chambers.
Thank you through the chair. When I came in and picked up my paperwork, I was absolutely flabbergasted that I didn't have to provide a criminal record check. I was utterly shocked that that wasn't a criteria for an elected official. So I actually do support leaving this in. It's interesting that, you know, is it enforceable? Do we have to do the deep dive, all those other things? But I do believe that it could be a deterrent for some bad apples that maybe don't want to go through that process or whatever that may be. And there may be some people that say, yeah, this is absolutely what it is. I'm gonna own it, but I believe that this is a different point in my life and I'm moving forward. And I think that's there, but I was shocked that wasn't a criteria before. So I'm certainly in favor of having it there. And I think we all have to own our decisions, and that's what it is when you go to the public eye.
Mr. Mayor, then Councillor Haas.
Thank you. I just have a question for anybody that knows the answer. I haven't done one in this community recently. How long does it take to get a criminal record check here?
Through the chair. So if you go to get a criminal record check right now, they'll say it's a week, but I know that if you request it faster, they're usually pretty good at accommodating those things. But I think as a part of our communications, we would be very clear if this is what the nomination period, and you need to give yourself, it's your responsibility to get everything on time, and we'll identify, you know, to give yourself at least a week just to give yourself some reading.
No, thank you. That's great timing. Not every community I've lived in is that quick.
Councillor Haas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the committee refer the draft election bylaw number 2004 to a future regular meeting of council as presented. And if I can just quickly speak to it, it's all straightforward. I think the number one thing that we've all or many have talked about, I think it's reasonable to have a criminal record check within that. My only concern is criminal record checks only tell a snippet. There's other things too, but we'll just leave it at that. But yeah, I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
Council, any discussion on the consensus request on the floor? Seeing none, we will call to question that committee refer the draft election bylaw number 2004 to a future regular meeting of council as presented. Council, if you can please vote electronically now. And that is carried unanimously. Council, anything additional on that item? It is for everybody's, just to bring it up, not looking to affect it one way or the other. 747, pardon me. We do still have 2 items plus reporting, closed session. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. If council is not interested in going beyond the 8 p.m. time this evening, I would request that we address item 5.5. Right now, I think it's a short item and there's a timeline associated with it. If council is interested in going past the 8 p.m. Then I don't have nothing to say.
Quick discussion, Councillor Haas.
I guess my only question, well, I guess a couple. I mean, the utility bylaws is something very important that is gonna be a budget, you know, our budget discussion and that too, but my bigger question is there a timeline for our closed session matter? Administration.
Through the chair, there isn't any hard and fast deadlines, but there is, you know, I would say a commitment to move this file forward as soon as possible.
Council? Councillor Taylor?
I feel it's imperative to discuss the closed session item today, and get that done. That's what I feel.
Council? Well, we can move forward and see what happens at 8 o'clock. Interesting things. So currently I have no other directions on the table. The agenda as printed is that we move on to 5.4 utility bylaws administration. I was ready to pull that.
We did this. I'll refer that to Mr. McLaughlin.
Okay, thank you, council. We have 3 bylaws in front of you, tonight. They're all tied together. One is the water bylaw, one is our wastewater bylaw, and the last one is our, rates and fees. We've put these, together, all